We'll walk through a journey today on our version of integrated planning. We've been calling it enterprise business planning. And this is a project that I've had the pleasure to work with Marie on over the last year to enable a global platform to do connected business planning, tying together finance, supply chain, marketing, sales on one consistent platform. So with that, let me let Marie speak a bit about the vision.
Thank you, Joe, and hello, everybody. So before I dive into the vision, I wanted to tell you about HP a year ago. So when we defined that vision, HP was running a very inefficient planning and forecasting process. We were basically fitting right into event statistics. So hopefully what I will describe to you now will resonate with you. So first, our operations plans were disconnected from our financial plan. Our long-term plans were not necessarily anchored into the reality of the short-term plan. And although this disconnect would create some reconciliation and then organization checking each other and making sure that others were making sense, or the plans were making sense. And most of it was done in Excel spreadsheet with every model owner empowered to define their own forecast methodology, their own level of automation based on their skills, right? Or even their metrics definition. They spent a lot of time, and 50% sounds about right, manually integrating, loading the data, running their model, and then they would have to consolidate all the data and narrative from the country level to the market level to worldwide level via email by sending Excel spreadsheet and PowerPoint slides. I mean, imagine the nightmare when I think about it, to consolidate everything to provide a picture to our CEO and to our leadership team. That was a year ago. Plus, when we're talking about decision meetings for forecasting, we would use PowerPoint slides, which are static. So you show a PowerPoint slide, the leader wants something changed, you need to go back to your desk, rerun the model, change the slide, go back to another meeting. Very inefficient process. So the vision we set was one plan. We need to connect all the plans for the company, the operations plan, financial plan, sales plan, marketing plan, long-term, short-term, everything connected. And that's a big, big change for us. And by the way, we moved to an 18-month rolling forecast process at the same time. Then we wanted to get rid of Excel. We put it in our vision, no more Excel. We are moving to a modern platform in which we are automatically loading data. So nobody has to do it. Cleaning data, integrating data, loading data done automatically. And we wanted to use machine learning, obviously, to establish a first forecast, a seed forecast that analysts could play with. So an analyst would just log into the platform, or will or are in some cases, see the forecast and start from there. So a huge difference. And then make real-time decision by using a collaborative platform where everybody works together on the same platform, and the platform is being used live during meetings to make decision. No more PowerPoint, no Excel, just a live platform. You want a simulation, it can be run live on the tool. You want to drill down into the next level of detail, you can do it live on the tool without going back to your desk. This is our vision, and you're going to see we're not too far from it.
And so this is kind of our EVP anchor graphic around that connection between customers and markets on that left to detect, sense, and understand what's going on in each business, in each geography. Roll that up quickly into the core, which is the blue circle. And then on the right, there's an element around supply planning and supply chain, enabling the supply chain to react as rapidly as possible to the changes on the left side. That's something that's actually one of the twists and turns throughout this journey has been as component shortages and challenges due to COVID in supply chains have popped up. That's become more of an emphasis over the last 12 months to connect that part of the planning picture together with the left-hand side. So let me talk a little bit about the overall ingredients to success. So I talked about this graphic in an earlier page. This is really the core of any business, right? These major functions. And enterprise business planning really needs to connect each of these, which has traditionally sat in a silo. And so the one platform we're talking about, enabled by Anaplan in this case, and a number of other applications like SAP and others around it, are creating an architecture that do connect all of these functions very effectively across the organization. For those that have not heard of this, our tagline is really, it's a cross-functional collaborative process enabled by technology. There is no one technology that just magically enables enterprise business planning. It is a process-led effort that is enabled by technologies, the platform like Anaplan, automation techniques, and other database or data cleansing platforms. If I think about the left, there's a fundamental need to connect customers and markets, sales motions, CRM information, just all different information and data about your customers and your customer relationships to that core, right? Classically, there are days or weeks or batch processes giving you information about your customers. It's usually often very slow, especially in different geographies when you get down to the local level in a global business. So, the big goal here is to give you that demand sensing, understand what your channel partners are doing, get data flowing in a way that everyone is collectively working towards a single plan. And then on the right, turning that backwards and looking at the supply chain, right? And the financial controls of that supply chain and sourcing and procurement decisions in that core. More now than ever, companies are facing challenges around the supply chain, and supply chains often don't react overnight. So there's a need for a longer term view, as Marie mentioned. So by pivoting and enabling an 18-month rolling forecast view and having the kind of muscles and capability to do more long-term views, that helps the supply chain in many businesses plan for what's coming, whether it be components, whether it be capacity, whether it be new factories or moving capability around the world. That's what it's all about in terms of connecting that visibility, both short-term and long-term, to enable supply to then fill channels and drive satisfied, happy customers. Now, what great looks like, right? So now we'll get into how do you enable this vision, right? And Marie and I have spent now the last year working through the elements on this page, right? And I think the first one, the top left, is often a cliche, but I'd say the management of change in an enterprise business planning program is significant. When you have a number of people who have been used to working in Excel, an unstructured platform where they can do whatever with data and formulas and modify things as they see fit, there is a considerable amount of discussion and convincing that needs to happen, and even showing them the platform and showing them something better throughout the journey. Typically, one of the selling points to get them to jump over that hurdle is some form of automation, some form of saving them time and frustration with data around validation of data, trusting the data, getting better, more timely information, not out-of-date information that makes their work life better, more interesting, and more of a satisfying experience. Supporting that is often a lot of new process and governance. In most enterprise business planning programs, this one included, we've had to instill new timing and new governance around when do things get updated, when we might lock information, different cycle times of weekly, monthly, quarterly processes that need to complete in certain times in order for the overall platform and the process to run like a Swiss watch. And that's where some of the technology elements come in. I think we've tried to use existing assets as much as possible. We're not talking a grandiose investment and throwing away investments in planning technologies you may already have. We've put things and worked with the existing assets to architect a solution where we have this enterprise business planning layer on top, tapping into data where it makes sense. At the end of the day, it sets up, you need to set up an integrated process framework for global deployment And that's critical in order to create a repeatable, efficient EBP process. What does that mean? Things like we have calendars for when weekly things happen around the world, when monthly tasks happen around the world, when data needs to get updated, when different jobs are run. And users are getting acclimatized to that cadence of work and how that should work. And what they also need to be educated and grow accustomed to the fact that they're now connected to everyone on the platform, and changes they make in one area may impact another area. And that's something to get used to on the overall platform. So we'll switch a little bit to our approach, and I'll let Marie kick it off in terms of some of the things that HP Inc. Specifically was looking for in the overall approach to the program. Marie?
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
So HP is actively promoting the value, a new core value, which is agility. And the key word here is new. It is new to the entire company. And EBP is the very first large-scale transformation program using an agile product management methodology. Of course, we've been using agile in software development for years, but to manage such a wide transformation across all functions to people who are not used to being in agile project management was a big challenge. And so we started by training. We took the Deloitte 1,000 training pack, to train 1,000 people to start with. And then we've been doing train the trainer and expand the notion of agile training, agile project management skills throughout the company. And even then, it is still a challenge. People can sit in the training, they can speak the language, they might understand the concept, but until you actually live through it, it's a whole different ballgame. You don't really understand it. And it was a big mindset shift for a company who's been very focused on waterfall approach to project management. So that was a big challenge we faced. But what it allowed us to do is we manage different work streams running in parallel. We reached a cruise speed of 5 releases at the same time, if you can imagine, each one of them at different stage of evolution, from planning to deployment. And so we had multiple release, and we were always centered around the user. So we worked very closely with the users to make sure that we are developing something that was relevant to them, give us continuous feedback, and then and that gave us the flexibility to adjust the development as we went. It also allowed us to react and change very quickly when we had new challenges, such as the component shortages, which forced us to change our process and go deeper into some of the automation that we were planning to do, and we could react more quickly because we were in an agile process. This entire approach and way of managing such a large-scale program was new to HP, presented some challenges, but eventually it allowed us to deliver very quickly, some value very quickly, because we have 3 sprints in one release. So every 3 sprints, we deliver something to the business.
Thanks, Marie. And I'll call attention to the graphic at the bottom here. And this is a little bit of a joke internally around the project, but it's we've had a lot of analogies of a rowboat to a sailboat to a powerboat. This graphic has emerged to pre-EBP. We might have been riding a bike. Right now, we're delivering, I'd say, a very economical Camry with nicely appointed features. And the future, might be, a Ferrari that really can drive 200 miles an hour and take any curve. Why do we have that distinction? I think the nice thing about the platform effect with an EBP platform, however you implement it, is that once you get up to that core nicely appointed Camry, the middle, then you have a lot of optionality to add new functionality or enable users as business models change. And the incremental cost to those releases is relatively low once you get the data in the platform up and running. And I think we're dealing with that now, as thinking about different business models that might come on board, or simplifying certain processes as some decisions are made to change internal financial processes. So going into more detail, this always comes up on discussions like this. How did you go and do this? So there's this emotional battle always between how long do you study the situation and do design or discovery before jumping in to the implementation. And for us, we had a bias towards being more agile. I think with a company the size of HP, with global complexity, so we're talking roughly 87 countries, 11 markets, 2 different major business units, so a lot of users spread around the globe. We made a decision that we're going to essentially cap discovery at about 12 weeks, and we're going to do a very accelerated sprint to learn as much as possible in the areas that are important around pain points, and really questioning what are the business outcomes you're trying to manage to, how are you measured in terms of those business outcomes, and what is the information, KPIs, data you need to manage to those outcomes. Really, those 3 core fundamental questions in different functions. And so as I load this up, we spent 12 weeks in discovery doing some basic assessment and design and architecture and forming an implementation plan with 2 major decision points. We really did not focus on massive discovery of the current state because we knew we had to get to something different. And we knew we had to get to a more standard process, which I'll talk about maybe later in terms of lessons learned, but a standardized process globally versus a bespoke process everywhere that was unique to everyone. So that was decision point number 1, reviewing that proposed process design, the technology assessment, and some short-term wins. The second decision point was working through a technology stack and that architected solution to make choices of how we're going to fit everything together. And that includes Anaplan, SAP S4, SAP IBP, SAP SACP, a whole myriad of tools that all come together in each function to kind of drive the overall program. Quick win targets in this case during discovery, areas where we can automate data pulls and try to reduce repetitive analysis and reduce the dependence on spreadsheets right away, especially in weekly processes. Driving some process orchestration basics, right? To get people to log in the same place, be on the same page, have a consistent timing and workflow. While delivering the essentials in discovery, which was having a vision of an integrated process, make a call on the technology stack, have some form of automation plans, and I think most importantly, a management of change tactical plan of how we would go forward and embrace changing the mindset of folks as we move forward with implementation. And Marie talked about some of those elements around a user community. We have user community forums to engage with the users, not force fit something into their world, but constantly listen, get feedback, and adapt what we're deploying. Then we rolled into implementation, somewhat if we were ready or not. We said, okay, here we go. And we started with things that were weekly processes, right? If you think about the efficiency gains, weekly processes ended up being first. And we started doing sprints to tackle those weekly processes. And I think that as I build up this, it's important to note the kind of color code boxes here. In all cases, we have an initial release, and then we have what have now become .x releases, so improvement releases of additional functionality. So we've also said strategically, hey, we're never going to get to the end of this if we keep listening forever to all the improvements needed in the backlog. So we have teams that charge ahead with the MVP to enable that MVP from release 1 to release 2, which in this case is sales forecasting, release 3 and beyond, which are things that are around more monthly commercial outlook and S&OP and beyond, where we're building up that MVP sequentially, but then we have teams also following, driving improvement releases for additional functionality that had been requested, right? And that's a strategic choice so that you actually get to the end and enable all the releases in a comprehensive.
Yes, that was a learning. We knew there would be improvement, so we would deliver an MVP and there would be improvement. There were so many improvements. As soon as people realized the value of the platform, that, oh, you can do all those things that my Excel spreadsheet can't do, they started to add more and more and more. We've been calling it the ransom of success because it's overwhelming amount of requests. And so we had to prioritize them, backlog, spin off a different team to just go and attack all of them. Great ideas. The creativity out there was fantastic. We were not planning to do all of that though. And so we kept forging ahead with the MVP like Joe described. That was a decision point. We either spend all of our time fine tuning that release until it's perfect, or we keep going. And then there's a cleaning crew who is delivering on all those different, we call it .x releases or improvement releases. And so that's what we chose to do. But once you give a taste of the platform to the users, they really liked it.
Thanks, Marie. So I'll leave you teed up here for some of the outcomes and talk a little bit about where we've landed so far and where we're going, and then we can talk about some of the lessons learned.
Sounds good. So we are not done, right? We are maybe halfway, I would say, through our journey. And so what we have done so far, what is working, and so remember we set the vision a year ago, so last July, and then we had the 3 months of discovery. We started development maybe September, I think it was, to October. That's when we actually started the development. And so in that time frame, we were able to automate what we call our weekly business management. So you have to imagine that our countries at HP are preparing a weekly business update with about 100 slides every single week with all the metrics that the management might want to see, a lot of just in case slides. So they prepare all those slides in every country, and then they manually roll them up to market level, consolidate them, the market, and manually via email and Excel spreadsheet and PowerPoint, as I was describing, market, consolidate, and send to worldwide. We automated the whole thing. So every country now is using the same metrics, the same KPI, the same format, the same report. The data are being automatically loaded into the tool for them, so they don't have to do it. The slides, there's no more slides. The tool is has the dashboards that they need. And then the just in case slides become drilled down, or using the platform to see a different cut of the data. And so that was done country rolling up automatically to market with the exact same structure, and then rolling up to worldwide. And we had our first review with our CEO. The first one was not quite on the platform because of people on vacation, but the next one is directly live on the Anaplan platform, showing him no more slides, but the actual dashboards on the platform as a roll-up of the work of thousands of people in the company. So we are pretty excited about it. You can probably tell it's a huge step for us. And then in parallel, we've had all those other releases going on. Sales forecast has been consolidated and deployed to all of our European markets. And then we have so many more going on in demand supply mapping, matching in finance. The big new releases now coming up are the finance releases and the switch to this 18 months rolling forecast, which we are getting ready for. But already a huge achievement so far.
Yeah, and I'd add a couple other things around the structured repeatable process is not just about data. It allows people to take narratives, local narratives, to feed them up so leaders can view trends of what's similarly happening around the world, right? In a bird's eye view that was really hard to tease out in emails or conference calls, prior, right? And you have a reference of, well, what happened last week, the week before, and it's very traceable, period over period, to view those trends in a way that the human brain really likes to kind of see them versus multiple emails and spreadsheets. Coming up, things that are more predictive and forward-looking in enabling more commercial forecasting and planning, structuring that process, looking at pricing, promotions, and 18-month rolling forecast views to help the commercial teams around the world make zero to in quarter and just beyond the current quarter decisions about the business, giving the agility that we talked about in the beginning part of the presentation. So let me just jump into some lessons learned. Marie and I will tag team this. I put these 4 on here, right, that I thought were very important. I think one other has kind of come to mind as we've talked through this around process standardization. But if I go around clockwise, I think the one piece that many of you who may be attending have implemented or struggled with implementations of planning tools. I know in my professional life this is one of the challenges. Data is the fuel, right? And so being very mindful of where is the data, what data do we have, the accuracy, the latency, the format of data to pull into platforms like this is really important, because you're standardizing everyone on the same platform. So that heterogeneity of data is always something to tease out in the discovery phase. And I think we've had kind of fits and starts with that. We've been relatively successful, but have not been without kind of challenges with data. Going around the horn clockwise, this was a project that was formed in the early days of the COVID dynamic. So to this day, Marie and I have not been in the same room and met each other in person, right? We're hoping to pull that off in August. But the thing that we've learned here is we got teams together, did social things, we did agile training, we did a lot of things where we were forced by the pandemic to do it virtually, and we formed new ways of working. And the interesting thing for me is that was almost a proxy for the way a process like this needs to work. It's enterprise business planning. You're connecting a lot of people who maybe didn't work together all the time together. They were in their own silos, and now they find themselves connected, right? And so, having kind of both program management techniques to connect people in ways like user forums and regional kind of discussion groups has helped along the way. And I think we are all looking for some grand reunion when this is all done and we can kind of get together to celebrate some success. Going around again, my power adapter example here. I think adapting to new conditions has been a feature of this program, in that we started looking at efficiency, demand planning, and demand forecast accuracy, and getting a picture of that, and we are still driving to that. But as this has played out, an effort to get more of a long-term view, an 18-month rolling forecast, and help get predictive views of what components are needed, or what business conditions will be out there in several months, has been a new kind of driving force that we need to adapt to. Right, that and what Marie referred to as the ransom of success. In December of 2020, January 21, we started going live with capabilities, showing people the tools, and there was a mass amount of popularity, and people wanted more. So we had to adapt to those new conditions and add more capacity for releases, to add those improvement releases, and do more in parallel. Last but not least, this is a cross-functional effort, enterprise planning. Again, you're connecting silos of people that have not normally worked together. There's sometimes discomfort. And I think this is a universal truth, that you will find that there is certain people that have their fingers in everything. And they're the answerers to many different questions, or they just become the bottleneck because they're involved in so many programs because of their position in the organization. So I'd caution you from a transformation office to look at programs, in-flight programs, conflicts, have some general notion of who's involved, because resource availability can overall crumple your plan if you pull out that one resource that happens to be holding everything up, right? And I think we've also dealt with some of those resource contention issues at times. Maria, I'll turn over to you. You want to talk about any of the other issues, or maybe the process standardization question that I posed?
Okay, so I agree with everything you said. The challenge we have is that we have many different transformation projects going on at HP at the same time, and delays in some of them impacted our schedule, but we were not allowed to move our schedule. We kept going with our schedule while other projects started to bump into us, meaning that at all the resources were basically, we have resources working on so many different projects at the same time that there was a pushback on you can't touch my data, it's just too much, my resources, it's just too much. And the data were moving from legacy system to their new final resting place, or the new platform, at the same time as we were developing our plan platform. So we would start development with legacy data sources and then switching to the new one. And so managing all the different projects and realizing that there is a sequence. And if projects are being delayed, there will be consequences downstream, and we need to adjust the plan. Otherwise, resources and data will suffer. And to me, that was the two biggest challenges, was